Now, I already told you people. First one's free. Then what I say? I said I will shut that shit down. So, back to it.
I don't care how strong you are. I don't care how fast you are. I can see the future. You don't live to see tomorrow.
Tonight, we are going to witness the most anticipated match in the history. Are you ready? Let's get ready to rumble!
Look, we starting this video swinging like Conquest and coming out with a hot take. I believe after having watched this episode multiple times at this point, I'm pre-recording this a few days before it releases on Amazon Prime, which, by the way, shout out to Prime for giving me early access to the episode. But I believe this is far and beyond the most brutal, intense, emotional, epic, badass, and more importantly, the best episode of Invincible so far. There, I said it, and that's the end of the video. Look, I'm kidding about that last part, but everything else I'm saying is how I truly feel at this moment. It is Negan versus Glenn round 2 in another universe playing different characters, but we are here as it is time to discuss and break down and review the Season 3 finale, Episode 8 of Invincible. Spoilers ahead. We open immediately after the final moments of Episode 8 as Invincible and Conquest clash and create a massive aftershock from the impact of the two Viltrumites, causing even more damage to the city that just witnessed an invasion. Now Conquest immediately gets the upper hand by overpowering Invincible, who's still holding back by fighting like his life isn't on the line, but that will eventually change later on. Now Conquest tells Invincible how Nissa normally handles these situations, which we saw last season, but he's not her. Instead, he tells Invincible the truth. He wants Invincible to resist. Look, he's not here to save Mark or spread the great gospel of the Viltrum Empire. He's here simply for the love of the game. Invincible takes heed of Conquest's excitement for battle and punches and tackles him into multiple buildings, thinking he's doing something impressive. Now, the destruction here at the start, I'm assuming that most of the city has evacuated most of the buildings, and the body count won't be as high as it was in Chicago in Season 1, and there won't be much collateral damage, but the show makes sure to change that level, that high level of the body count and the collateral damage later on in this episode. As we see, Conquest isn't affected by just being thrown in buildings, but instead he's even more amped and he wants more from Invincible, who gives it to him. Now we watch Invincible hit combos like never before. He's actually fighting like a hero who's come a long way and has taken beatdowns as he punches Conquest into the sky and tosses him off balance and takes a huge windup and punches Conquest into space. Look, there's plenty more action to come, but I have to take a moment to appreciate the level of aggression and confidence from Mark right now. I feel like a proud father or a big brother or something, because all these episodes of watching him getting his ass beat to watching him now, I could actually shed a tear in this moment. But there is still plenty of time, unfortunately, for Mark to see what a real ass whooping looks like. Now in space, we see Conquest is bleeding, but he has this very sadistic smile on his face as if he just wasn't thrown into buildings and punched into space. This man does one of the most disrespectful things I've seen in a fight to the death, as he blows a bubble of blood out from his mouth and makes a little cute heart for Mark as a sign of expressing his love for this moment of pain that he is about to deliver to him.
It was at this moment that he knew. Now
Conquest tackles Invincible back into Earth's atmosphere as Invincible managed to break free, and he's feeling himself still and even questions if Conquest believes that this fight will go his way, as Conquest tells Mark,
Still sure this is gonna go your way?
Damn near certain.
This punch literally sends Invincible back to Earth and has Mark reconsidering his whole saving the planet career as we cut to Debbie, Paul, and Oliver watching it all unfold on television. Look, I said this before, and I mean this. If there's one thing I learned about Oliver this season, it's just that boy is ready for that action. Like, he's always down to fight, no matter the circumstances, as he wants to help his big brother. But we see Debbie initially goes to stop him, but instead she tells him to keep his distance, don't let Conquest grab him, and if things get too dangerous, he has to leave the scene. Now, admittedly, Debbie's story this season wasn't as impactful. She didn't have as much to do as she did in the previous seasons, But I really do appreciate the show not having her be so against Oliver being his own person, because let's face it, he's from a different planet, born under different circumstances, and she realizes that Oliver has to literally and unfortunately grow up much faster than Mark did. But I do like that there's still nuance to Debbie wanting to be a mother and wanting both her sons to be safe. Now, as Invincible slowly gets up, I love how they didn't rush past the gravity of the situation and really showed just how hard he was hit by showing him coughing up blood. And this shot of Conquest flying from the sky and feeling the impact was just perfectly captured. Not only was that shot insane, but seeing the actual impact of Conquest's punch leveling the city just showed how much strength a Viltrumite truly has. As Oliver sees this and tries to fly into action and tries his best to catch up, but Conquest is just way too fast and he's just tossing Invincible around like a rag doll. Now, I'm no animation expert and I'm very aware of the complaints about the show's overall animation for a lot of people out there, and I know the show has its deadlines and there aren't as many animators on the show as it should be, especially with the budget of having Amazon behind you and especially on this scale. But neither here nor there, I thought the animation in this episode felt so much different, but in the best way possible. This felt like season 1 peak animation style for me. For example, this little detail of Mark taking a moment to gather himself truly looked like it felt so much different than anything else that we saw this season alone. And there's so many other examples throughout this episode that I personally thought looked really good for animation style. Again, you just felt the gravity of the whole situation and the punches felt like they had actual impact on the characters. So I just want to say this now, kudos to the animation team and everyone involved in this incredible episode. Now, Invincible, now having felt some of the brute force of Conquest as he's ready to land another devastating blow, we see Invincible puts his hand out to stop and try to talk this out. Now, Conquest kindly stops for a moment and does listen to what Mark has to say, but he's just having too much damn fun beating Invincible's ass and he won't allow him to surrender as he chokeslams him into the ground. Conquest, being the nice guy that he is, we see him wiping the blood off Mark's face and gives him a pep talk that there's still a chance for him to pick himself up and tells him that he just needs the right motivation. So we see him look at the nearby civilians who are struggling after the devastation of what just happened in the city. Conquest lets him know his plans after killing Invincible and is killing everybody else on the planet, but in comes the perfect motivation for Mark as Oliver arrives and hits him with an uppercut, and for about 0.2 seconds, he's got a little bit of momentum going for him, but he quickly is reminded that he's way over his head. As Conquest slams him like an annoying gnat and grabs him by the foot, and he tells him,
"And you are? I prefer to know who I'm dismembering."
Again, motivation as Invincible literally kicks back into action and frees Oliver. Invincible wants Oliver to leave, but it's too late because Conquest now has his sights on both of them as he's running straight towards them. Now, Conquest continues to mock Invincible's lack of wisdom and his lack of having that killer instinct needed to be a Viltrumite as he slams him through some more buildings and tosses him around more, and he ultimately demands that he show him his Viltrumite heart and he wants to see Invincible's true power and his rage. Now, Invincible hits him with a massive headbutt and begins unloading on him with punches, and he doesn't stop until he slows down because of how exhausted he is after getting his ass whooped up until this point. Plus, literally just having saved the world from a bunch of versions of himself across the multiverse and going against Angstrom. Look, I'm an Invincible fan. I'm not trying to make excuses for my boy, but Invincible isn't 100% in this fight. Now back to the action. Conquest isn't impressed and lets Invincible know that this isn't gonna end well for him. Look, we're at the halfway point. Let's just call this halftime for my sports fans out there, and the score is not looking good for Mark. All right, let's have a little bit of sideline commentary here. Let's be honest, my boy Mark came in hot and he had the juice with him, but he completely underestimated the OG and the vet who's been doing this for God knows how long. If Mark is going to turn this around for himself, he's going to need some help. Which, speaking of help, back at the Pentagon, we see Cecil panicking because Earth's best defense is getting demolished by the strongest being Cecil's ever seen. Now, to make matters worse, the new Invincible Reanimen aren't even anywhere close to being ready for combat. Now, I have to call out Cecil for a bit here. I mean, come on, Cecil, what the hell have you and your team been doing this whole time? Now, I get the previous models have been occupied this season, but why on earth weren't the prototypes even close to being ready? I'm giving no excuses to this situation because the GDA has been proven to have this limitless budget. So for me, Cecil takes an L in this moment in my book because he should have been prepared. Now checking in with Eve, we see her parents are watching the news as Eve regains her consciousness and she awakes, and we get a better understanding of the time from the start of last week's episode till now, as she's been out for almost a week. Now Eve sees Mark on the television, he's in trouble, and unfortunately reveals Invincible's identity in front of her parents, but that's not important right now as she creates her own cast for her leg and lets everyone know that she's not going to sit around and watch from the sideline even though she's not 100%. Now back to the main event, Conquest lets Invincible know that he's been toying with him this whole time. He's just playing with his new toy for the first time as he questions why he was sent to conquer Earth as we watch him skateboard on Mark's chest because it's just too damn easy for him. Conquest mentions Nolan and how he used to show promise when he was younger, and under his impression, he thinks that Nolan is dead, which we know that's not to be true. Now, Oliver re-enters the fight and drops the silliest line in a fight that I've heard in a very long time. But I know he's a kid, so I'll leave him alone. Now, the OG knows he's old, but he's strong, and he lets little Ollie know that he plans on splitting him in half and eating his heart. Nothing out of the ordinary, of course. As Conquest pimp slaps Invincible into the next block as he focuses his attention to Oliver. Oliver not only coughs up a good amount of blood after getting slapped by Conquest, but he also coughs up half of his teeth as well. Now Conquest grabs little Oliver and begins ripping him from his feet to his head slowly as he's describing exactly what Oliver is going through in the moment. Now Invincible stops him before killing Oliver as Cecil arrives to transport Oliver to safety. In the meantime, Cecil goes to speak to Eve, who reminds him of what she's capable of and lets him know that nobody will stop her from helping Mark. Now that we have seen just how powerful and playful Conquest can be and see how well he is with kids, we now enter into the fourth quarter and into the most brutal parts of this episode and arguably the show. Now, we thought the train scene from season 1 was bad with Nolan and Mark. Well, guess again. As Mark just has to be experiencing deja vu at this moment, as they're now near a beach and we see Conquest wants Mark to see what's about to happen as they fly so fast and they're flying past all these innocent people. I'm talking men, women, children, even animals, as they all get split in half by the quickness of their speed. God damn, that was brutal. Now, Invincible manages to break free and punches Conquest and thought that he was in the clear of everyone he loved being directly in harm's way, but unfortunately for him, in comes Eve. As Invincible intervenes, but he gets his leg snapped as Eve tries her best against Conquest. I've said it once and I'll say it again and I'm standing behind it. Eve is my favorite character in the show because she's just such a dope character. For those who I know that have read the comics have said that the show has given her a lot more in the show than what they've given her in the comics, and I just love the character so much. But even with that said, the show sometimes, most of the times, forget what Eve is capable of. I mean, she basically has a similar skill set to the Green Lanterns, but has even more powers in my opinion because of her ability to controlling and manipulating matter. As we watch her suit up and he tries to hit her, but she heightens the density in the air, causing him to freeze mid-air as she shows him her tricks. I can't even begin to describe the various weapons of matter she creates on him, and she honestly is holding her own for a little bit. But unfortunately, he breaks her suit down like a fraction and hits her into next year and even breaks her jaw in doing so. Now, Conquest doesn't stop there as he does the classic Viltrumite punch and punches her through her intestines. As we watch, Eve falls from the sky as she slowly dies as Invincible catches her mid-air and he tells her,
I can't do this without you. I can't live without you. Please.
We watch as Mark breaks down and screams and yells like never before for Cecil's help. Now during this, we see Conquest has no chill button on him as he licks the blood off his hand and has a conversation with himself.
Oh, such a strong bond. Viltrumites have nothing like this. It's a weakness, really. Delicious. Really. You know, it's not often I get to cut loose like this. Usually there are so many mission parameters, so many things not to destroy, people not to kill. But for whatever reason, and I don't really care why, I was ordered to take control of Earth by any means necessary. You did something to piss us off, and I thank you for it. This has been an immense joy.
As Mark responds by telling him,
I don't care how strong you are. I don't care how fast you are. I can see the future. You don't live to see tomorrow.
Bars. Those were straight bars, Mark. That was cold as ice. I'm loving this I don't give a shit attitude right now from Mark because it's time for him to finally not care and fight to kill. Now, this is the motivation Conquest spoke of earlier because right now Mark thinks that Eve is dead, and right now all he wants is Conquest to be dead as well. Now, Conquest wants Mark to do his worst, which he does as he flies in the air, punches him, and lands by destroying Conquest's cybernetic arm, but unfortunately he breaks his forearm while doing so. But now running on pure adrenaline and rage, Mark uses his other arm and punches and kicks Conquest, but you notice a level of aggression and recklessness from Mark in this moment. Now, Conquest notices the recklessness from Mark as he gives him a bear hug, but we see Savage Mark bites him, tearing off the muscle tissue. Now, while Conquest and Mark continue to fight, we see Eve wakes up from her near-death state and rebuilds her entire body. More on that a little bit later. Now, Mark takes notice of Eve's resurrection, and he unfortunately gets distracted as we see Conquest takes the upper hand again. Now, I don't know why, but I love this moment of Conquest sharing his personal story with Mark about how the other Viltrumites fear him and how he doesn't even have a name and how lonely he is and how he wants to cry sometimes, but he just doesn't do it. And he tells Mark to take that to the grave while choking him was just so funny to me, yet so badass at the same time. This man is literally a psychopath. Now, Conquest gets hit by a very powerful energy beam from Eve, and it takes off and burns half of his skin. Now, after getting resurrected and unleashing the energy beam, we see Eve loses consciousness as Conquest promises to kill Eve this time around. Now, after hearing this, we see Mark levels up his anger and begins to beat the hell out of Conquest, saying that he won't touch Eve ever again. Conquest tells Mark that he's got more than enough to take and kill Mark, and he catches his punch and breaks Mark's other hand. Again, amused, we see Conquest laughs at Mark's pain, but Mark tells him that it's not enough as he headbutts Conquest over and over and over again to the point where his face is completely disfigured and he looks like another version of Angstrom. I guess at this point, smashing of the face is becoming Mark's signature move. This moment was completely justified in my opinion, but speaking to the moment itself, I thought it was so important to Mark's arc, and seeing him rage out and use his true anger and the Viltrumite power and lose control even more so than he did with Angstrom in season 2, this was just such a memorable and truly gory moment. Now, Mark barely has any energy left, but he still manages to check in on Eve to see if she's okay. Now, they let each other know that they love each other as they both eventually lose consciousness. Now, talk about terrible timing. We see the members of the Guardians of the Galaxy, Tech Jacket, we got Brit, we got Kid Thor, and other various superheroes finally arrive to the scene with Cecil. Again, Cecil, the timing is horrible, my friend. This man is collecting L's in this episode like Infinity Stones. Now, after 3 days, Mark wakes up from his coma after being patched up from having his bones broken, his skull fractured, and his leg broken as well. As Eve asks if he remembers anything from the fight, which he does, and he also remembers thinking that she died. Now, this is where Eve reveals to Mark with the emotional trauma, she can use her full powers on living organic matter, overriding the mental blocks installed in her brain by the government when she was a baby, and that she was able to rebuild her entire body. And again, it just shows that she's incredibly powerful and just basically a god. Meanwhile, Cecil believes that more Viltrumites will be coming and rushes to Sinclair to finish the Invincible reanimate to be ready for the next battle. Now, Mark and Eve's reunion is briefly interrupted by Debbie and Paul entering the room. Debbie sees Mark and begins to cry and apologizes for mentioning when he was younger how she was just waiting for him to get his powers and just putting that pressure on him, and she kind of blames herself, but we see Mark tells her that she was a perfect mother. Now, Cecil checks in on Mark, and Mark immediately wants to know where Conquest's body is. As he shows him the dead body of Conquest, we see Mark tells him to burn the body, but we'll later find out that Cecil has other plans in mind. Now, I'm so glad that we got to see Rex's funeral and to continue to show the impact of the character's death to not only the story, but the characters also. Now at the funeral, paying their respects, we see Eve and Mark and other superheroes, including Robot, who speaks about Rex and actually changes his name to Rex, which is actually a callback to the future version that we saw of him back in the season 2 finale. Now, of course, I can't go without mentioning in the background in the funeral, we see shrinking Ray in the back crying, and she's completely devastated and heartbroken. We watch as Eve and Mark share to each other how much Rex meant to the both of them, and they both regret having not had gotten a chance to say goodbye to Rex. As they both realize being at this funeral how lucky they are to be alive, again I have to mention RIP to my boy Rex. Now as we wrap up, which is something Mark and Eve aren't doing in this intimate scene, but we see them in bed, and I'm not entirely sure what the ooze coming from Mark's suit means. We end underground where the set would set forth yet another plan to invade Earth as they build an army of workers and homeless people. Now in space, we see the remains of the Viltrumite last seen fighting Battle Beast. Which, speaking of Battle Beast, we see him floated in space and he gets picked up by an alien species, and after briefly being on their ship, Battle Beast slowly wakes up as he says, "No!" Now cut to the technicians giving Angstrom a new arm, which he's thankful for as all parties are working on the same team now, and he's provided them with a new home, and that's just the beginning of their new partnership together. Again, another L by Cecil, but this time around, I kind of understand his thought process behind this, but it's still a huge risk. As we cut to the middle of nowhere in the desert, where Cecil wants to get more answers about the oncoming Viltrumites. As we see, he kept Conquest's head and body and encased him in a 400-ton prison awaiting for him to awake. As our last scene of this season shows Oliver, who's happily recovering, and he looks forward to learning more from his big brother, who tells Oliver he was right, and he also tells him,
"So if anyone else ever puts my family or anyone I love at risk, I won't hesitate to kill them."
Now, our post-credit scene for the episode shows the return of Damien Darkblood, who we haven't seen since season 1 after Cecil sent him back to hell. As we watch him summoning his lord, who's being voiced by Bruce Campbell, by the way, aka Ash, which makes this casting even more hilarious with it being a demon, as Darkblood has means to restore the lord to the infernal throne, as he has come across a surface dweller that he can use to help him do just that. Now, it sounds like they want to use this surface dweller's body as a vessel for the lord to reclaim his full powers and get the throne back, and I would like to believe that they're referring to Mark. Definitely another storyline to look forward to next season. Which, speaking of season, where do I even begin? Let's just start off and talk about my overall thoughts of this finale. Which to me, this was the best finale, just a hair above season 1, and I also love season 2 finale, but this one just literally hit different. For me, it's the buildup of seeing Mark this whole season and knowing he didn't want to kill, and him seeing what the decision can cause and not doing so, and just felt more impactful than the other ones, for me at least. I thought the overall production of this episode, from the score, the cinematography, the animation, the voice performances, were all incredible. Jokes aside about the whole Negan versus Glenn thing, but Steven Yeun is just so perfect as Mark, and he gave such an incredible performance going through the entire range of emotions. Now, to speak to the whole Jeffrey Dean Morgan of it all, playing Conquest, I saw the comments in my video last week, as well as just online in general, how people took his few couple lines at the end of the episode and said that they didn't feel like he fit in the role, but I'm just going to speak for myself. Yes, did it sound like Negan at points? 100%. But as the episode went along and we got more range and we saw more lines from him and him mocking Mark and sharing his everyday pain and everything that he said in this episode, I felt by the end of the episode that he knocked it out of the park. I thought he did a great job in voicing the character, and it was just such a great character in general, and I seriously can't wait to see what the character does next, and I'm really excited for their next big fight. I honestly don't have any complaints about this episode, and I'm going to go on record and claim that this is my personal favorite episode of the entire series so far. Now, for the season overall, I've covered each episode and I share my individual thoughts on each episode in those videos, but I think this was a really strong season. Now, I'll admit it started off a little slow for me. There were some weak parts in the middle of the season, but I still enjoyed the character arcs, the overall theme of the story, the characters, and the last 2 episodes alone were peak Invincible. Now, of course, I have my little nitpicks and some character arcs that I feel like weren't really fleshed out as much as I wanted to, and I talked about those again throughout the season, but I do wish we would have gotten maybe one more scene to see where Nolan and Alan were, but I'm assuming we're going to probably kick season 4 off seeing where they are. So I would say season 3 and season 1 are super close, but I'm going to get my ranking, and I'm going to go ahead and say, coming off this finale, my ranking right now is season 3 1 and 2. So there you have it. This will end my recap and breakdown of episode 8 of season 3 of Invincible, an episode that did not disappoint and showed when the show is clicking on all cylinders is truly a great experience to watch. Now, for those that watch all 8 breakdowns this season, I really appreciate you all. For those that have been watching my breakdowns from the beginning of the show, I thank you all as well. And for those watching this video for the first time, I hope you had a fun time as well. Now, if you all want to check out my reactions to the highlight of this incredible episode, they will be available to watch on the channel now under my Invincible playlist. So now it is your turn to share your thoughts in the comments below. Share your thoughts about this finale, favorite moments, least favorite moments, your overall thoughts of the finale in general, overall thoughts about the season, and how would you rank the 3 seasons of Invincible so far? Let me know in the comments below. Now, if you all enjoyed this video, do me a favor, hit that like button. Let's try to get this video to over 1,000 likes. Also, hit the share button. Share this video to anyone and everyone you know that loves talking about this show. And if this is your first time here, welcome to the community. Consider sticking around by subscribing to the channel today. And if you all want to take the support even further, consider joining the channel memberships, which can be found in the description of this video. Again, I appreciate all the support. You all are awesome. Stay safe, and I'll catch you all on the next video.